we want to thank you, listeners, for all your support, your ongoing efforts to become a brand ambassador for Imagine Fitting In. There's a number of ways that you can support our efforts here. Number one is share it on your social media link. Share the episode, please. And be sure to hit the link, hit the button, subscribe button on YouTube. And we are also available on Apple and Spotify. And number two, you can please consider making any donation that you feel comfortable with. It's always appreciated to advance our efforts here and even increase the level of production and bring you more and more great guests from here in Dayton, across the country, and even around the world. So thank you again for those who have donated to date, and you can find the link in our show notes. And then finally, number three, I love the idea of guest referrals. So if you know anyone who has a great story, would like to share their efforts in the community, about their work, their contributions, their efforts, from all mediums. We love a good story. Mentors playing a huge role in all of our lives. And here at Imagine Fitting In, we're trying to highlight the importance of mentors and encourage more of the same to our young people in this community and potentially, extended area. And please consider that. We'd love to hear from you. Again, the show notes, you can reach me at thebalanceprofessor@gmail.com, and we hope to hear from you. So again, we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's always a blast. I feel it's a pleasure and an honor and privilege to be doing what I'm doing. So I look forward to hearing from you. And again, please enjoy, share, subscribe, donate, and become a brand ambassador, and even just refer a guest. So thanks again. You take care. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Let's go to cells. And let's look at what a cell needs, because isn't that what we're eating for? I mean, you're trying to nutrient the cells that are
right. Maintain
yeah. Dietary fats are king. Also build every single mediator we need to run our master regulatory system.
And we're live today on another episode of Imagine Fitting In. Imagine Fitting In is based in Dayton, Ohio. I have a really quite interesting guest today from near Oklahoma City, and I believe Edmond, Oklahoma. Very excited about this, Mr. Chip Paul. Like most of my experts and people in fields of study that I'm really interested in, I usually going to give Paul an opportunity just to kind of introduce himself, give us a little background on where, what his work is, and a little bit about that, and we'll get started later. So welcome, Chip Paul.
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you for having me on. It's always fun to talk to new people, and so you've got an audience that is new and likely has never heard of old Chip Paul. So this will be fun. But a little background on me. So I kind of wear two different hats. So I have an activist hat that I wear, and my activist hat really has to do with medical marijuana. And my wife and I were, teetotalers in 2013. We didn't drink alcohol. We didn't smoke marijuana. We didn't really do anything. We're just trying to raise our family. And both of us suffered from quite a bit of pain. So we decided to drive to Colorado in 2014 and try medical marijuana, which worked for us for our pain. And that we became huge advocates. So I started studying and researching the system why medical marijuana works, because it works because it affects the system called the endocannabinoid system. We also became activists in the space. And so my wife and I started the first nonprofit which petitioned the state of Oklahoma for medical marijuana. So we're actually the people who turned Oklahoma green. It took us 2 times to do it. It was quite an effort. And it was quite a fiasco after we passed everything, but, we stay involved in that effort. And we believe that that's a kind of a means to an end into kind of the second thing that I do, which is really my profession. And I'm a researcher. I'm humbly said, I'm top 5 in the world on the study of something called the endocannabinoid system. I'm a adjunct professor this semester at ASU. I, helped build the curriculum on the endocannabinoid system at Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. So I'm pretty well versed in the system. I know it very well. But the cool thing is that as you study this in the endocannabinoid system, a couple of facts about it, because people immediately associate it with marijuana, and it shouldn't be. So it's our master regulatory system. And in fact, we developed it in something called a C-squirt. So in the same, let's say, evolutionary guide where we developed a spine, we also developed an endocannabinoid system. And in fact, everything with a spine has an endocannabinoid system. In all those things with a spine that have an endocannabinoid system, it's looking to be the master regulatory system in that thing, and certainly is in us. So what I mean by that is the system sits above our central nervous system. It's the system that makes determinations when we should eat, or how much we should eat, or when we should have an immune response, or how much of an immune response we should have. So it is our master regulatory system. And when you study this system, some really cool stuff happens. You learn what you should eat. You learn what a cell needs. You learn how your immune system works. And you learn that nature, environment too, but certainly nature, is really the ultimate arbiter of this endocannabinoid system. And you cannot even begin to believe the harm that we do to ourselves right now just in our behavior and diet. So,
Right. Yes. I mean, I'm all in. It's interesting, Chip, because in about 2014, I was living in San Diego. And for whatever reason, it was around probably actually, let's see, what was it, New York? I was in New York 2014. I was probably in New York City about 2012, 52 years old. Come to understand and realize I was actually, I finally self-diagnosed myself with probably ADHD, and at 50-some years old. And I found exercise as my particular medicine hit to take me down a buff or whatever. Of course, everybody as kids, everybody's experiments with alcohol and marijuana and various other recreational drugs. Alcohol never got it. It never did anything for me. The one thing that oftentimes that the cannabis would do, and I say cannabis because that we know about where the name marijuana comes from. That's a whole nother story. But the cannabis, it actually would take me down a level. And I never wanted, even before I self-diagnosed, I did not want to self-prescribe or basically try to go to the doctor and get on meds. So I just focused on the exercise. Now, I'd like to back up just a little bit. I want to get a little bit more background from you on here, Imagine Fitting In. It's all about looking for nuggets of inspiration, of knowledge, of education, inspire the next generation, inform people that are interested in other alternative modalities of terms of medical, health, wellness, and all that. Okay. So tell us about, where were you born, where you call home today, and what was family life like with your parents?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Oklahoma, and I'm a native, so I'm Chickasaw Indian. I'm 6th generation Oklahoman, 6th generation Chickasaw Indian. Had a kind of upper middle class. My dad was a banker. He was past president of the Oklahoma Bankers Association, so he's a pretty successful banker. So I had a pretty interesting childhood. I was overweight when I was a kid. So I really...
Me too.
Yeah. And so that, if you have that, then you know what it's like to be judged, and you know what it's like to be, kind of vilified and made fun of and all that. So I kind of had that, thrown on my self-esteem at an early age.
Right.
But I kind of view that as a blessing now. I think that, created a vulnerability in me, and a passion, and a kind of empathy, for people. And, I certainly don't like to see people getting picked on, and I certainly don't like people picking on people who are overweight, because I just, understand those issues. And that, honestly, overweight is there's two major health issues, and I'll talk more about bringing in a second, but there's two major health issues that really get me. And, obesity is one of them because, again, that's controllable. And it's just, that's a lack of information on our part, right? So we can anybody who's obese can fix their obesity issue with just really some education, some modification, but it's not eating less necessarily. It's just modification. Same thing with autism, right? So autism is such a big deal. But anyway, I've studied those two things very deeply because they're big problems. But the obesity is personally kind of, I have a personal dog in that fight because I know how hard I tried to lose weight, to control my eating, to control my appetite. And, it just never worked, right? Until I kind of, cannabis for me, when I was a kid, I started smoking cannabis when I was 13, 14. And that immediately got my weight under control, which is interesting. Which kind of happened for me. But there's way more to the weight story, let's say, than just that.
Right.
But, yeah.
Of course.
But I found cannabis, when I was 14 or so, at the time I would have said, I was smoking it for fun. I also started doing a lot of other drugs at the same time. I would say, again, cannabis helped me with my weight issue. It probably helped me with my anxiety issue. It probably helped me get through high school, which, I would have probably blown my head off otherwise. So it was a friend and helper. But when I was 20, I had quite the cocaine problem. And so I quit doing everything, including cannabis. And I was a complete teetotaler for almost 30 years until my wife and I drove to Colorado. And so it was a big decision for us to try that. Yeah.
I will just share this with you. I did kind of the same route. I was not a musician, but I was in the music scene. I was a sound man for a band, started about, experimented early, found it like very, I don't know, it somehow, it just was I was attracted to it and it fit for a while. And then by the time I went to moved to Chicago when I was 21, of course, in the 80s, we all know the 80s was the kind of cocaine scene, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I'm just going to just match you on that. I literally just gave up everything. I've never been an alcohol person, but all the drugs I didn't eat a French fry, potato chip, or alcohol or bad food for like 20 years.
Oh,
but
wow.
Go ahead and continue your story.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I kind of had, there's a bunch of middle, let's say, between, kind of that and,
sure.
and my activism, let's say, or kind of the start of my endocannabinoid journey. I raised a family and that was great. I have two boys. Interestingly, my oldest son, well, I won't tell you that. It's too personal. But anyways, I have some, let's say, issues with my older son because of my belief in the endocannabinoid system, cannabis, and my kind of passion and activities there, right? So he feels like that's not a copacetic thing for whatever reason. So
in terms of the actual science and physiology that we're talking about, he's just uncomfortable with the kind of societal indications of that.
All marijuana is bad. I don't even want to hear about the endocannabinoid system. Somehow has to do with marijuana, not the turmeric that I'm eating. So I'm just going to have a closed mind and not even listen to you, Dad. So yeah. So it's, he's in the wrong there, not me, but it's, he'll figure that out eventually.
Well, Paul, I have to just tell you that, again, I will, what do you call it? I'm going to both thank you and also say that, I feel for that situation because it's just a kind of basic misunderstanding. And we know, and I've said this many times before in the podcast, relationships within families, within, relations, and, everybody has these set experiences, expectations, what's like driving them. And there's so much to be discovered. And I will tell you that, again, I want to applaud you for your openness, but also feel for the situation. And I wish all the best for that. So let me ask you, was there a particular teacher or individual, like when you were in school, like when you mentioned you were heavy, did you play sports? And was there any coach or teacher that along the way that like changed your mindset in terms of mentor?
No, I knew you were going to ask me this question. And I would say I was mentorless, which was kind of part of my problem. I didn't have a rudder, right? My dad was a fairly strong guy, but he was a conservative banker. He didn't
Hmm.
really share the same beliefs and thoughts that I did. I didn't really view the world, in the same way that
Sure.
he did. So I was probably rudderless. I've had different periods, I would say, through my life. So I had this kind of drug and alcohol fueled, teen period,
Yep.
and just quit doing everything, and then kind of found friends that were a similar mindset, let's say, and had support, because that's kind of hard to do, when you're 29 and everybody's drinking beer and you just say,
Right.
well, I'll have my water, right? But
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
you have your kind of support group and all that. So I kind of went through that. But then when Cindy and I made the decision to kind of try cannabis for our pain, and that really just kind of changed everything. You
Sure.
know, I would say no, I don't really have a mentor. I've had to rely on God, so God is my mentor.
Okay.
I really feel like I've formed a close relationship. Like I certainly in the area of endocannabinoid sciences, or let's say cannabis activism, which are kind of my two big lanes. I feel like I get a lot of guidance there, right? So I feel like I am the mentor in that
Okay.
space. I am the guy that's helping other people. I am the guy that's teaching other people. I am the guy that's helping with activism. I'm plugged into, the incoming administrations,
Wonderful.
changes that'll
Yeah.
happen. So, I feel like I'm kind of am the mentor in that
Sure.
space.
Sure. Well,
So,
let me ask you. Were you always kind of a curious guy? And I mean, I will tell you, like, that's me. I'm just, my two words are what if, and I'm just always curious and learning more. And the fact that, it was a real eye opener when I began a research project back in 2014 when I was in San Diego, and I had this full blown, probably 75-page PDF that I was inspired to learn more exactly the roots of, cannabis,
Mhm.
the usage of the hemp and blah, 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 and how it took its journey. And I was completely blown away to understand that we have this system in our bodies with natural. And I think I just mentioned to one of my clients yesterday, I said, just because, right? People talk about alcohol, no problem every day. Oh, no big deal. But there's the amount of like craziness and violence and associated with it's not even talked about compared to like, when we call weed or cannabis. But I told my client yesterday, I said, well, God created cannabis and God created us. And so when I made that realization, I was blown away. So that's why I'm fascinated to have you on.
Yeah,
Um,
if you look at like, and I'm a why guy. So like my question is why? Got to strip the bark off everything and figure out why.
yes.
Uh, and that's kind of fun. It's also, annoying at times.
Yeah, right?
Right? Yeah, because as you know, but if you look at, the cool thing that as I began to study the endocannabinoid system, what I immediately realized, I realized several things. So first of all, it's not like you're being lied to in, let's say, medical, pharma,
Sure.
biology, but it's certainly like you're being taught, and I don't care if you're a PhD or a doctor, you're getting taught this box about human function. Here's human function. And the answer is way bigger than that. I mean, the answer is just tremendously huge. But if I know all these answers out here, boy, I look like a god in this little box and I can kind of do whatever I want. And that appears to be kind of the way that our institutions are constructed, right? That there's kind of
Mm,
this control layer, and then there's, Dr. Joe and Dr. Bill. And, these
yes.
folks know a lot more than Dr. Bill and Dr. Joe know. Well, when you begin to see that matrix, oh my gosh, and more of that matrix begins to appear. But I'll give you an example of this. Because I don't want to put you on the spot when I say this. I just want to illustrate a point. What are the two most important foods you eat every day? Yeah,
You mean
and again,
the macronutrients, or you're talking about details?
just the two most important things that you literally have to put in your mouth every day, and the two most important foods that we eat every day.
I would say my high quality protein sources and my omega-3 essential fatty oils.
You're the first one to even get half of it right. Okay. So omega-3 and omega-6 fats are the most important things that we eat. Okay. Every day.
Chip, people ask me all the time.
Yeah.
What's your secret? They're most people think I'm 15 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
I'm 61.
Yeah.
So, it's like, it's so funny you say that, because my father, God bless him, he introduced me to flaxseed oil probably close to 30 years ago. And I can still remember every morning I taste it, I think of him going, "Oh, Dad, it's awful." He goes, "Believe me, you need it." So I've been taking that religiously, between that and red cabbage.
Yeah.
I tell everybody that's my secret right there.
Yeah, no, and and here's why. Let me kind of walk you through the science behind this, because I think this is important for people to know, and hopefully your audience will kind of enjoy this. But so omega-3 fats, well, we'll do omega-6 fats. So omega-6 fats, first of all, come from mainly in our diet corn. So there's corn in everything. We eat way more omega-6 fats than we eat omega-3 fats.
Right.
Omega-6 fats are what are responsible. First of all, they're master precursors for our endocannabinoid system. So omega-3 and omega-6 fats are what build our endocannabinoid system, which is our master regulatory system. And if you look at kind of what the most important thing that you do for yourself every day is defend yourself, right? So we have an immune system. So without an immune system, we would be, like the roadkill that we see on this side of the road every day. We'd just be turned to mush by bacteria.
Right.
So we have to have an immune system. So omega-6s build the inflammatory side and the reactionary side of our immune system. Okay. Omega-3s build the deflammation side and the healing side of our immune system. So if I'm properly configured as a vehicle, I'm eating pretty close to equal amounts of omega-3, omega-6. So what happens is in an immune event, I can inflame, I can deal with that, whatever situation's going on, infection or whatever, but basically heal it. And then I can deflame it. And that should be the way that I work in all immune events. Now, everyone has immune events every single day. You have immune events probably every single second. So this is a really important thing to work. Now, what we're doing right now in our society is we're eating a bunch of omega-6s and no omega-3s. That creates about the worst situation possible for you as a vehicle in order to configure yourself to survive, okay? Because let me tell you why. If you do this, what happens is we set a super inflammatory tone in our body, and it's very reactionary, okay? So you might be allergic to dust. Well, you might be able to go normally through a dust storm, but not right now, because one little dust stimulus is just going to wham, cause this over-immune reaction where you're just way out of bounds for that stimulus, okay?
Got it.
And that's where 99% of us are right now. We eat 40 units of omega-6 to every 1 unit of omega-3. And that's just, if you eat normal, that's where you're at. How do we fix this? Sounds horrible. I don't want it to be that way. It's really easy to fix. Eat more omega-3s, okay? And if we begin to eat omega-3 and omega-6 in balance, then that sets more of a little bit of inflammation, heal the event, deflame the event, come back to normal. Whereas right now we're, in what world do you need an immunosuppressant? So think about what that means. That's something that's going to suppress your immune system to beat a virus like COVID. That should never happen. Only in this really reactive state, right?
Right.
Why? Because you have an allergy or you have an infection or some other infection, and you're hyper-inflaming over this, and you don't have enough juice and goodies to deal with the flu that you just
got it. Hey, listen, you're speaking to we call it the choir or whatever, preaching to the choir. I say it over and over, and one of the things that my father, God bless him, he told me in his reading, he was a self-read man. He'd get subject, he'd read stacks of books and he'd underline sentences. And one of the things he pointed out to me, when you do the flaxseed oil, you must eat it with a high phosphorus protein for it to really optimal assimilation into your system.
Okay.
I've been doing that for 30 years with a low-fat yogurt or cottage cheese. And it's like, I will tell you that when I go to the dentist, I heal quicker. My gums don't bleed as much when they're poked around. I take care of them. I can tell you, I did get COVID, probably from the vaccine. Recovered, was very mild. I rarely get a cold. I suffer a little bit from allergies, but for the most part, I just love what you just said about all that, because I'm going to have every single one of my clients realize how important that is. That's powerful.
Well, yeah, and I'm like you. So I'm 64. I take, most people that are, let's say, around our age are taking a statin. They're taking some kind of blood pressure medication. I don't take any medication. I'm, a vegan. I intermittent fast. I haven't been sick. I equally got COVID. I got COVID in January of 2020. We didn't even know what COVID was, but I got pretty sick for 2 weeks. But that's the last time I've been sick. I'm banging healthy, and we have a clinic, right? So we have a non-medical clinic, and we have some interesting tools where we can evaluate people, but I, help people every day. So I'm seeing super sick people, people that have like diseases that they can't even figure out, people
Right.
who the medical system has failed. And, again, I don't get sick, so I'm kind of as you are, living testament to this lifestyle. So
Now, just following that up, and we'll get moving to more questions. When I first speak to a client, I go over those controllable factors, and everybody talks about quality of food, of course, and then quantity, but I put something in front of that. We know water's important, obviously, but the timing of your meals is critical to be on a regular schedule. Just like you go to bed the same time, wake up, your body wants that. And then I always say, okay, get the timing down, then focus on the quality, and then adjust for the quantity. Most people, and that's simple. That's a simple message, but people, they all look at me and they go, oh my God, that timing thing's the worst. That's the most difficult thing to achieve. Because I also tell them, it's like, it's not what you're eating, it's what you're not eating on a regular basis. You can get away. I eat really healthy, like 89% of the time, 90% of the time. And then when I want to eat something just kind of junk and like, red dye, whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to eat that. I enjoy it, blah, blah, blah. But go ahead.
Yeah. So we're, very like-minded, I would say, in our experiences. So, and also probably in what we are telling people. So the most important thing that I could ever tell anybody about your health is intermittent fast, right? And there's a reason for that. And let me kind of walk you through this. And what I've done is I have studied human function. So when I talk about things, I'm talking about things from the perspective of your cells and kind of what's going on inside of you. So I'm not, relying on someone else's diet plan or, coming up with someone else's intermittent fasting plan. I'm just telling you the way that you work, and it's factual.
Right.
So a couple of things on eating, right? So we all think we're all addicted to food. I mean, every one of us is, right, in some way, unless you've kind of fasted and broken that addiction. But we all think that we have to eat every, 4 hours and all this. Well, okay, so here are the facts. So we can go 40 days without eating anything. Wow. You have to drink water, but you can go, all of us, anybody can go 40 days without eating, okay? Eating is by far and away the most costly thing that we do to this vehicle, all right? When we eat, it conformationally changes the way that this vehicle is operating. So we go from a very efficient high gear into a very inefficient low gear. And this happens with mitochondria. So literally we go into something called a fed state, where all of our mitochondria start running on glucose, not fat. When we're running on fat, we're 20 times more energetic. We've got a very strong and powerful immune system. We've got 2 ways to fight cancer up here. We're very, very strong. Down here, we've got none of that. Zero. You make cholesterol down here, you break it down up here. Now, if you're breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you live down here, right? And you're weak immune wise. You're going to get infected with pathogens. You're not going to have a strong immune system. You don't have any way to kill cancer. Your body's running on sugar, not fat. You're 20 times less powerful. If you're an athlete, it's just really going to affect you, right? So this switch works in a 5-hour cycle. So when I eat, I've got 5 hours of low gear ahead of me because it's so costly to eat. Everything in my body has to focus in now on
all that energy required to digest. All right, and we're live again with Imagine Fitting In podcast with my special guest, Mr. Chip Paul. Welcome, Chip.
Welcome. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate your time. This topic of the endocannabinoid system is would say it's about time we get this message out into the people. We're kind of picking up, if listeners watch, we'll see this, we're kind of picking up this kind of a part 2 of our other startup conversation. And where we were talking about was how is the endocannabinoid system related to eating, and, through food and how that affects us.
Yeah, and so we really have to go all the way back down to a cell and really understand kind of what a cell is doing and kind of what a cell wants and needs. And so inside of arguably the most important thing a cell does every day is produce energy, right? Without a cell's energy, we wouldn't be alive. We wouldn't have energy to do the things that our bodies need to do. So a cell has to produce energy. And a cell produces energy in mitochondria. And there might be, one mitochondria in any given cell, or there might be 1,000 mitochondria in any given cell. I think 1,000 is kind of the average number, that we use in, let's say, metabolics. But each one of those mitochondria really produce something called ATP. And ATP is like the gasoline for our bodies, and they'll produce ATP at different rates depending on kind of different stimulus, let's say. But each one of those mitochondria have a CB1 neuroreceptor expressed on their outer membrane. And that CB1 neuroreceptor is for control by the endocannabinoid system, because the endocannabinoid system would have to control us at really our energy level, our energy producing level, if it was our master regulatory system. And it is our master regulatory system, so it does control us at the mitochondrial level. Now, there's different ways that our mitochondria can run. So they have let's say they go from a least efficient system to a most efficient system. The least efficient way to run a mitochondria is how cancer runs mitochondria. And that's with something called the Warburg effect. And that's kind of a 1 unit in, 2 unit out, exercise, which isn't that efficient. If you look at glucose, so glucose I call low gear in humans. So if our mitochondria are running on glucose, we're kind of running on low gear. That's a 1 to 32 exercise. So 1 unit in produces 32 units out. And then we have a high gear that we run in, and that's more when we're burning fat. And that's a 1 unit in and like 106 units out, which is way more efficient. So when you're in a fasted state, which is kind of, what intermittent fasting does, puts you in a fasted state, you are beta oxidizing. You're being the most efficient at running your mitochondria. And then there's kind of a 4th gear that plants run on that's light, so they produce ATP by light. But all of those things matter in how we produce energy and kind of our overall energy status. And so, there's this whole low gear, high gear thing that really has to do with eating. But it all comes back to mitochondria and basically the control of those mitochondria by the endocannabinoid system. So like the endocannabinoid system will know if you're in energy distress, if you need energy. And again, how does it know? By that CB1 neuroreceptor on the mitochondria. And then it will control that mitochondria with that CB1 neuroreceptor.
So that when you say CB1, is there a CB2? Did I hear
Yeah.
CB2 receptors as well?
Yeah, so let's back up a second. So
Okay.
so the way the endocannabinoid system works is it's like a pharmacological system. So it works very similar to, let's say, our endorphin system or any of the other pharmacological systems that we have in our body. And so it will have basically ligands, let's say keys, and it will have locks. And
Mm-hmm.
so the locks are receptors that are on cells. And in the endocannabinoid system, there's really two main types of locks, CB1 and CB2. And then there's ligands that will interface with those. So your natural ligand at CB1 is a fat generated from omega-6 called anandamide. And THC mimics that. And that's why THC works.
Okay, I have a question for you because you said lignin, correct?
Li- yes.
So the flaxseed oil that I consume has I picked out like unfiltered high lignin.
Okay,
Now, how's that link? Yeah.
lignin is different than ligand. So
Oh.
ligands are a way to describe, let's say, a general class of stuff in your body that are proteins. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so inside, a cell. What is the number one thing a cell wants to do? Produce energy. The second thing a cell wants to do, defend itself. The third thing a cell wants to do is work. And most of the work that a cell wants to do is produce ligands. So ligands are proteins, just a string of amino acids.
Got
And they
it.
signal, like, so if I need to, tell my body to do something, I'm going to produce a string of amino acids, send it out, and tell him to do something, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what, obviously I think it's fascinating to me that I don't even know that even the term just master regulatory system in terms of like, was that ever, I've never gone to a doctor. I've never read those three words together. And, it's sort of like a real education for me. And I'm sure my listeners, and obviously you're the expert, that the endocannabinoid system, as you sharing here, is the master regulatory system. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like, well, what we don't, it was never described that way. We obviously was always told like nutrition's important, what you eat, rest, exercise, all these, air quality, water, blah, blah, blah. But it's just interesting to me that all of a sudden, that this is just obviously a strong fact, but we are never educated about,
No.
right? In terms of
Right.
how the body just actually runs entirely. And it seems like they seem like a very few common words that if
Yeah.
it would be
It's
great if
not.
the doctor would actually explained it. But what's your
Yeah.
thoughts on like this, that lack of knowledge?
Well, the doctor doesn't know, first of all, sadly. He's in the same boat that you and I are in. So he's never been taught about this system. He's been taught that the central nervous system is kind of the master regulatory system and, it's sort of involved with everything. But
Right.
again, the endocannabinoid system rules the central nervous system. But I say all the time, I go to Home Depot and I
Uh-huh.
buy a lawnmower or a leaf blower, right? And the first thing I get is an owner's manual. And I'm one of those guys that opens the owner's manual and I'm going to figure out how to put it together. And then I'm going to figure out
Yes.
what to put in it and how to care for it. And if stuff goes wrong with it, then how to troubleshoot it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I get an owner's manual for anything that I need to take care of except me, right? I never got an owner's manual. So my wife and I ended up writing one. So you can go to our supplement website, TrueMedX.com, TrueMedX.com, and for free, you got to give up your email address, but you can
Okay.
download Operations Manual for Humans, which will help a little bit in this kind of crazy world,
Right.
understand kind of what's going on with you and how to care and feed for this thing.
And when I was back in the day, when I got into fitness, and I had a real hard steer into nutrition through the help of my dad, God bless him. And I remember that, coming to discover that doctors, obviously, they don't have any nutrition classes. They're basically in the business of disease.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, our whole human development's been like, oh, why is this scarlet fever? Why is this person going crazy? Why is this? And they go after all these end results and these treatments for these maladies. But, again, it's kind of like an oxymoron in terms of health. Like, yeah, come to the doctor and you stay healthy, make sure you stay healthy. But ultimately, it's like, I don't want to wait around and like wait for a disease to happen. So I
Yeah.
think that, again, that this is just enlightening for both me and I think a lot of people. But what other types of like animals have the endocannabinoid system? Is that like from our creation? And
Yeah, it's well, okay. So you have to really kind of dial this back, and if you know a lot, let's say about cellular biology, I mean, just the fact that the
oh yeah,
mitochondria,
you're right. The average,
right?
right? So
But the mitochondria inside of every cell has an
yes,
endocannabinoid receptor, as do endoplasmic reticulum, as do most organelles inside cells, not just every cell, but organelles inside cells. So that just should, if you're science minded at all, that should just, ring in your ears and say, oh my gosh, that's, just tells you how old and basic the system is. But if you just go back to, let's say, an endocannabinoid system itself, where
mm-hmm.
we developed that was in something called a sea squirt, it's looking like. And a sea squirt is where we went from kind of sponge like things in the ocean to more vertebrate. And a sea squirt, their larvae will have a little bit of a backbone and a tail to kind of swim to the next rock, right?
And I think most in layman term, people would think of the seahorse, right? The little,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
start, right?
But
The
basically,
spine.
those guys had an endocannabinoid system. And so, really, anything with a spine goes back to those guys. So, anything with a spine will have an endocannabinoid system, to answer your question.
Got it.
Now, you mentioned something about doctors and kind of, let's say, our existing system. And it's sure looking like, let's say, our existing system is kind of this little box, right?
Right.
That doctors are trained in and kind of researchers are trained in, when the truth is much bigger, right? And that's nice if you kind of know the truth, because you could be like a little god. Oh, I could dole you out little pieces of truth and kind of control how science, moves along and advances and all that. Well, it kind of looks like what's been done, sadly. And so the box that these doctors have been put in is kind of this single molecule drug development, box that
So,
never considers any kind of outside party, like a pathogen, like a bacteria, virus, things like that.
so not even like, okay, that small box. And you can see it almost justifies this whole idea of like when we hear about all these doctors just being able to put their head around specializing in one area,
Yeah.
but not looking at the big picture, all the boxes, how they
If
play with each other.
Yeah, if you've ever read a spy novel, right? So one of the things in a spy novel is they'll talk about compartmentalizing information.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
this is so bad in the medical system. Like, let's say if you're an oncologist, right? So if you're a cancer doctor, and somebody brings you a X-ray, okay, doc, will you look at my X-ray? Uh, no, I can't look at your X-ray.
It's too much
Why?
information.
No, it's outside of my professional scope. And
Got
my
it.
professional scope is oncology. And if I recommend anything outside my professional scope or give you any information that's outside my professional scope, then I'm basically committing malpractice and you can
Mm.
sue me. So doctors are pretty, boxed in, let's say, and even
Hmm.
doctors who don't want to be boxed in, are boxed in by the
Right.
system. And no doctor wants to lose his livelihood or lose his, malpractice insurance. And so, I kind of got you, doc.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have to bring it up because I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm sure it's not like it's going to change overnight. And we know that, like with the recent Robert Kennedy Jr., right, put in
Yeah.
his position. What's your you know what's your opinion, topical take? What can you? I, I mean, I've heard a lot of interviews with him one on one, and I've heard a lot of, like, I don't know, almost I feel like sometimes inept criticism and this kind of labeling, of which happens all the time. We all know how it can go down, either side of the aisle, whatever you call it. But for the whole part, what could you share in your opinion of where you see this change?
Oh, we're getting ready to have radical change in our health system because of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he knows about, let's say, the big box, and he knows the game that's been played about the little box. And so, how do you rapidly change this? And this is what people are wondering: how can we possibly change the health system? Well, one way is to cut out research dollars that are going to the wrong things. And so
Hmm.
that's already kind of been stopped. Like, why isn't it all hands on deck on childhood obesity? I mean, it's,
Exactly.
33% of our kids are obese, right? They're going to die of diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all these horrible deaths. 33% of our kids. So, to me, that should just be an all hands on deck thing. But let's rewind this a second.
Wow. Just a little break here. Another great episode. I hope you are enjoying Imagine Fitting In podcast. And just a reminder here, please remember to hit the subscribe button, because we love to feel you a part of our Imagine Fitting In family. And if you want to become a brand ambassador, we'd love it if you would share this link on social media, through your email, all your friends. You can help with us with donations, any small donation, big or large, whatever you can manage, to help encourage us and support our efforts here. And you'll find that link in the show notes. And finally, again, a reminder, please refer guests to us. You can find me and contact me at thebalanceprofessor@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. All right. So I hope you continue enjoying Imagine Fitting In. All right. Till next time.
So, like right now in our current medical system, physicians are, if you take, let's say, a condition like obesity, okay?
Hmm.
So, if I'm a doctor who's treating obese patients, I get paid to maintain those patients. I get paid a certain amount every month to maintain those patients. So, I'm not getting paid on, A1C or anything like that. I'm just getting paid on maintenance. I have to do certain things and record certain statistics, but again, I'm getting paid on maintenance. And who's the payer in the system? It's the insurance companies, right?
Right.
So again, all that needs to happen is that goal needs to change. And so instead of maintenance, I need to now be rewarded on getting your BMI down, getting your weight down, getting
Results.
your A1C down. Yeah, exactly. Results. And, if I can't do that, well, then I shouldn't, be rewarded. I mean, maybe I should get some time and attendance money for doing something, but I shouldn't
Right.
be rewarded to the level that physicians are being rewarded for now. So there's no incentive in the system to cure. There's
And the
no
amount
yeah.
and the amount of reward that goes on that, and the amount of discretionary whatever reward up top is not even right. It's like, so how much is going to people and the system and whatever the. I don't, yeah, it's a clarity. It's refreshing. But I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, no, and like right now, the way that, let's say I have 100, obese people that I manage in my physician practice, right? And I'm not a doctor, but let's play like I am. So I've got 100, obese people that I manage. That's about $50,000 a month income stream, right? Is pretty substantial. You can build a really good business or around $50,000 a month in
Right.
income, right? And that's gross, not net. So you still have to provide some services for that. But that's great. I mean, if I'm a doc, why don't I just set that up? And again, whether I get people better or not doesn't really matter as far as my compensation. It might matter to me as a human, but it doesn't matter as far as my compensation goes. Well, let's say we change that. And again, now I don't get compensated any unless I lower someone's A1C or lower their BMI or lower their weight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Now I'm a lot more interested. Now I'm looking for ways that I can lower their weight loss. I'm going to natural products. I'm going to people like Chip Paul and saying, Chip, help me. I got to help these people lose weight. How do I do it?
Right.
Right. So I'm now looking for answers and looking for cures. And it starts this just engine of, we're going to get
Innovation.
better. Yeah. And innovation and science. And now we're excited to learn new things instead of maintaining our old system. Right.
Mm-hmm. Man, I mean, it's like, again, the whole, you know, like the process of even just educating people in general and how where you have a framework of addressing issues, um, and then it gets to a point of like status quo, and then we get settled in, and then that innovation we talk about, which I want to believe like I'm an innovator there, and that it's interesting because the work I'm doing, um, it looks like it's going to be a really, finally found that a niche or a need for someone who's been doing some great work in mental health recovery and people down, down in their luck, confused, distracted, and using that physical plane to really, have that as a launching pad. And so I find it refreshing right now. And now we're in the 21st century. We're all understanding so much more because so much more information is available to us. But this is just, this is why I believe this is a fantastic conversation for just, it's almost like health 101 we're having right here. And like,
Yeah.
okay, let's throw out all those old textbooks that have just been like, supposedly the Bible or whatever you want to call it. And now we have this new refreshing authors, innovators, people coming in ways to look at, what we call problems or our quality of life and our health, which that whole episode, the obesity episode, the dealing that's been going on forever. So is the endocannabinoid system really our master regulatory system? So it is like, and if so, like explain that because, when I've been saying that ever since I've been understanding that this is your master regulatory system, I'm like, wait, I didn't really know if there was any other system, like I said before, mentioned before, like, and how, tell me about like, is this like racing across? Everybody knew this. Is this a racing across people? I'm sure you're popular. Is it racing across the airwaves, so to speak?
No, not really, because again, it's when you're a person like me, let's say, so I'm no PhD, no MD. I'm happy to debate and argue with those guys. I love doing that. Doesn't really reflect on my authority or let's say my smarts, but at the same time, when you're looking at me, it does reflect on my authority right now, right? So we have a tendency to listen to, doctors and professional class people over, let's say, Joe Randos, like me.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I'm not right. And that it doesn't mean that other people aren't right. Right. So we're going through this big kind of change, let's say societal change that I see right now. And, I'm seeing, let's say, old authority sources, things that we used to really rely on as authority. Like, let's just say the physician, the white
Right.
coated
The
Dr.
trust.
Fauci, like, lab physician, right? So
Yeah.
we used to trust him implicitly. Whatever he came on TV and said, or whatever he told us in a textbook or whatever, was absolute fact. Well, that's gone again. So we
Right.
destroyed that through COVID, right? And we've lost that, let's say, link to that white coated lab, white coated authority. So now we're kind of looking around, for, well, if they're wrong, who's really right? And, some people stumble on to, let's say, my information and, information about the endocannabinoid system. And it resonates with some people, but here's the ultimate thing that's getting ready to happen. There's a new authority in town, right? So there's a new authority in town that's unimpeachable. Now, everyone in the professional class will argue against this, but AI is the unimpeachable authority.
Oh,
So you
right.
can you can go to AI and say, teach me about geography or teach me about anything, and it's going to teach you. And then if you want to drill deeper, you say, well, I want to drill deeper on that, and you can drill deeper. And if you say, I want sources, I don't really believe you. I want you to just cite that information and provide sources. It will, which is awesome. So there's a
Right.
so I tell people all the time, if you don't believe me, download Chat GPT and ask it. It's going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you. So when you're on truth, it's the AI and things like that will validate truth, but you're going to see a lot of lawyers, doctors, professional class, let's say, people scrambling around because the AI can do it. Write me a contract between Greg and I. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
30 seconds later, you have your contract. Evaluate this blood test for me. Boom. And it's better than what your doctor, would give you.
Right.
Um, so, that's coming. And so I feel very confident, let's say, in our truth story and, how it will be validated by AI. But the fact that, everyone isn't picking up on this information yet is interesting. And it just, there's a tipping point that'll happen. We're close to it now. And,
Yeah.
I've been doing this since 2016. I've been trying to, convince you that, we had a better way for health and that the endocannabinoid system was your master regulatory system. And it really was the secret to health and the secret to, let's say, manipulating, your health. And, I've watched people's awareness slowly kind of turn on between 2016 and now.
What do you think? I mean, again, this is like I'm asking these layman's quick questions that, like, based on like the average American trying to eat healthy, and we know it's questionable in some of our food products, right? In terms of what's in the food products and the chemicals and the raised, all that kind of stuff compared to like Europe and regulations and stuff. But how does someone now understanding like, whoa, okay, how does the endocannabinoid system, how can they like get advice and information like you that, like
Mm-hmm.
on the street, so to speak, that this is science
Yep.
and it's reality and we're cutting through some bullshit. And how does the average person kind of relate to that? Now I know it's the endocannabinoid system is the master system. Where do we go from there in terms of how can now I know it's going on, but now I'm doing everything. I'm eating right. I'm sleeping good. I'm trying to eat as good as clean as possible. So what's your
Well,
thoughts on just general, like the layman's person?
yeah. What is eating right? What is eating right? I would start there. What is eating right? And where are you going to go to find that information? You're going to go to the USDA? Well, that's a lie. We've learned that now. You're going to go to Dr. What's His Nut on, Twitter? Well, good luck there. So, even all the way. So to answer your question, we don't know enough about this thing yet to be able to make conclusive answers. So what I've done, if you look at like what we should eat, well, again, let's just stop that. So let's forget about what I should put in this thing's mouth. Let's go to cells. And let's look at what a cell needs, because isn't that what we're eating for? I mean, you're trying to nutrient the cells that are
Right.
alive in
Maintain
you,
the,
and
yeah.
trying to feed the cells, right? So isn't it important to kind of figure out what the cells need first? And then let's talk about how our diet either supports that or doesn't support that. So that's what our work has been about. And again, what does that look like? Well, again, what does a cell need? A cell runs on, glucose or dietary fats. We really want our cells to run on dietary fats. So dietary fats are king. And here's a side little bit that's really interesting. Dietary fats also build every single mediator we need to run our master regulatory system.
Hmm.
Okay. So what's the most important thing that we eat every day? Well, dietary fats. And of those, omega-3 and omega-6 are king. Why? Because it's what your cell needs and you need them in balance. And then if you look past that, what do you need next? Well, amino acids, which is basically protein. That's what a cell needs to do work. So we all need protein. Past that, vitamins. What are the most important vitamins? The water soluble ones, because you blow through those every day. So B's and C's. You store A's, D's, E's, and K's. And then past that, trace and fiber in a fermenter. I mean, we all kind of need, fiber in a fermenter to help build our gut biome, the things that, the bacteria that live in our gut. But a cell really needs those things in kind of that order. So if I back that back up into food, well, what should I eat? Well, I should, number one, be concerned about omega-3 and omega-6s and eating those in balance. So what's a good source of omega-3s? And, you may know, but most people don't, because they're hard to find in diet. But chia seed, flax seed, hemp seed, walnuts is
Right.
kind of it, right?
Right. Is avocado, salmon, different kinds
Salmon.
of fishes?
So fish eat. There's a master precursor for omega-3 called ALA, alpha linolenic acid, and it's in algae, and it's also in chia. It's in nuts and seeds, let's say, and algae. And so fish eat the algae, but then they break down the ALA into EPA and DHA, which are in fish. Okay, so we all think, oh, I get my omega-3 from fish. No, you get EPA and DHA, which are omega-3s, but you're not getting the master guy. He comes from seeds and nuts. You've got to, and grass, let's say. So you've got to be eating something that has a lot of omega-3 in it. Now, it used to be, just real quick, let me finish this point real quick. So it used to be that in our diet, our meat had omega-3 in it, because our meat would be eating grass, our meat would be eating like wild, let's say. And by virtue of that, they were imbuing those omega-3 nutrients into their meat. Okay. Even chicken right now. So a chicken's egg, we all think, oh, well, I get omega-3 from egg. It says it right there on the package, omega-3 from egg. I get it. Very little. And again, based on what that chicken was fed, if that chicken is eating a lot of corn, well, that egg's going to have a lot of omega-6 over omega-3 and not going to be a very healthy thing for you. So we just all have to really, we have to grasp this knowledge. And I think this is what RFK Jr. is going to be doing, is really helping re-educate us about how we work, about the endocannabinoid system, I hope, because I want to be there to help him teach it. But all of these principles, right, to better understand, to give us this owner's manual, that we need for running this thing.
Right. And it goes right back. I mean, obviously every person, obviously here is grass fed, and that's a great explanation of why that is obviously so powerful. Number two, the hopefully the rotation of crops or the fields that the cattle, right, or whatever are grazing on, right, the quality of that. I find that fascinating, because it's sort of like this. It's also interconnected, from the farmer, right, growing the land, how he's treating the soil, how dead or alive it is, and that grass is going to have a level, and then you ideally, right, eat that grass fed. And I think I'm assuming it's just a type thing of the masses to try to can there be enough cattle on enough land across whatever to feed us all that kind of stuff? So, the
It's
corn is obviously
it's more the, and again, most people don't know this because most people don't, go tour feedlots, let's say.
right.
But again, when they're finishing cows, most of the, let's say, ground beef that we eat, I mean, they're feeding them, old candy bars. They're just pumping them full of corn syrup and, stuff to put weight on them. And that all imbues in their meat. And then you eat that. Okay. So
So
you might
no
not.
no omega-3s there really.
None, no, all omega-6, right? But a grass-fed cow or a grass-fed buffalo or something that's grass-fed, grass-finished will have omega-3 in it. And so you'll get that in the meat. Now, another thing that I've studied quite a bit is, well, could we fix this by feed, right? Could we come up with a better feed? And almost every animal will eat hemp, okay? And hemp turns their meat into a vitamin. Just saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when
Again,
you
there's
say
a
it
lot
turns
of,
into a vitamin, like what type of vitamin?
well, it turns their meat into a well-balanced omega-3, omega-6 thing that also has all the adequate protein. So if you look at hemp is a complete protein. It's got all the protein, all the amino acids. Most people don't know this. There are 9 essential amino acids that you need every day. Now, why is this important? Eczema is a disease that's associated with you not being able to build a certain protein. Okay. So if you can't build this protein, you're going to have eczema. Well, the way a cell works is a cell will never use its own amino acids, let's say, to do anything. It looks right outside itself. So do I have enough amino acids to build whatever, this protein for eczema? And if I've got enough, then I'm going to build it. If I don't have enough, no, I'm not going to build it. So having all 9 essential amino acids in, let's say, the extracellular matrix, the space around cells, is really important. Otherwise, you're going to have cells that just quit and give up and won't do their work. So those 9 essential amino acids are in, we call that protein, okay, to make it even more confusing. So protein is nothing more than a string of amino acids. So we're looking for complete proteins, right? Proteins that have all 9, let's say, amino acids. And
Let me ask you, I've always heard of there's 8 essential amino acids. Why didn't I never hear 9?
Not sure. Ask chat.
Oh my goodness. You know what I'm saying, right? That's a very common statement. It contains all the 8 essential amino acids. I never heard 9. Never.
Yeah, it used to be.
And I've read a bunch.
There's 7. No, there's 9. There's definitely 9. And I couldn't name them right now. I don't know.
Sure.
All right
no, I understand.
head, but there's 9.
But you understand my confusion.
Yeah, no, it's just
the condition I'm in.
Recently, I'm looking at B vitamins, and I'm like, well, why do we skip? What happened to B6 and what happened to B17? Why do we skip all these B vitamins? Well, I decided I'm just going to build, a complete B vitamin. I don't care why we're skipping stuff. I'm just going to go get them and reconstitute a complete B vitamin. At some point in science, someone thought those guys were important enough to say these are essential to you every day, and then we took them out. So it's just, again, there's probably good reasons why we took them out, but I'm like, I'm just going to build a complete B. Well, guess B17 is something called amygdalin or Laetrile. And there was a clinic in Dallas at one time that was injecting people with Laetrile to cure cancer. And allegedly this was, they had hundreds of thousands of people. So you would think that it was pretty effective and worked pretty well, but got shut down by the FDA. And guess what happened to B17? You can't get it anymore.
So the powers that be, the structure, it's just so fascinating about how obviously when you said AI and technology and, the word is out on the street, you know what I mean? And I think it's really coming down to I relate to you so much, Chip, because, I am a certified a trainer, health conscious, right? I
Yep.
don't have any PhDs and masters of whatever. I didn't go to college. I'm a self-read guy, and I've been very effective in my business with
Yep.
very happy people.
Yep.
And I feel that, like, as you mentioned, right? We have, from the people in Dallas to all these things that are like, hey, we're doing more on the ground and almost rebels of realism and related to health and
Yep.
wellness.
Yep.
So I think it's just the most. It feels like it's gonna be the most fascinating time since, like, we saw the what we grew up with, and now we're older and we realize this is very interesting for me. So
It's
can you supplement into the endocannabinoid system?
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And so that's the coolest thing. If I understand how this thing works, right, and I understand how things in nature affect, let's say, different knobs and levers of this
Mm-hmm.
thing, well, then I can pull things from nature and do all manner of changes and manipulations inside this system. And we have patents around doing that. That's what TrueMedX is. That's why
Oh,
we're, being asked to do drug development in certain cases. So, and we'll be doing a lot of drug development as soon as we kind of get our pathway cleared here, which,
yes,
hopefully RFK Jr. is going to help us with. But yeah, it's there. So we have a clinic. We have and again, I can't call it a health clinic because it's non-medical, but we have, let's say, a
yes,
holistic care clinic. And so we have ways to evaluate people, and I can use a blood test, or we have a bioresonance machine, which is great. And then we also have a thermal imaging camera. Now, a thermal imaging camera is a real diagnostic. So if I was a radiologist, I could actually, diagnose you with a thermal imaging camera. But we use these to get a baseline on people. And the bioresonance is really good at identifying, let's say, what pathogens someone might have. And what we're finding is that most disease, what is RA? It's a symptom of something. What is allergies? It's a symptom. Acne is a symptom. Cancer is a symptom. Those are symptoms, and we call those things diseases now. But God is a perfect engineer. You just don't break. You just don't. Hey, Greg, I think today you'll have a heart attack. It doesn't work that way. It takes years of, let's say, strain and stress for you to have a heart attack. But what causes that strain and stress? That's what we're trying to figure out. And this is what medical science does not consider right now is third parties, meaning some kind of infection. And almost all disease is tied to some kind of infection. Well, if you can
right.
identify the infection and identify what's causing it, and then you can go out here to God's perfect system and find the things that you need to kill those things that are safe for you, guess what? You get better. And guess what? Your symptoms go away.
It's almost like our modern world and the development, and we know we're in a capitalism. That's capitalism, democracy, but it's capitalism, and for the money, and obviously the ability to, right, in our environment, in our water. What's the things that we've created
Oh,
that are in our environment, in our air, in the water, in our food? You know, not even just considering the nutrient non non high nutrient, or the lack of really high nutrients in our food, which we try to sustain ourselves. Right? We can see that both we're undernourishing ourselves ultimately, and then all those we're exposed to all these things that we was there. I heard that, is that right? Like 700 some chemicals or some additives to food that
yeah.
in Europe there's outlawed, but here it's just like, oh, it's just a given. And so how much of that environmental, because we always say like, oh, it's genetics and like, you're predisposed to cancers and just different problems. But man, it's just like so many unknowns right, the natural world. Like you said, God is king, and we've adulterated the earth. That's for sure.
Well, think about this. So if I don't give you an owner's manual, right, and I leave you naked and afraid, and I just let her whirl out here, the chaos and confusion, and don't even try to control it, about people trying to teach you about how you work and, what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat and all that. It just creates this chaos and confusion, this mess, this giant soup of a mess, right? Well, again, it's pretty simple. If I leave you that way, you're going to get infected. You're going to get a hook, round, and pinworm infection, which is what anything with a spine gets. Our dogs, our cows, our pigs, our sheep. And we know to deworm those guys every 6 months. But, when was the last time you dewormed yourself? Right. So we get these parasites, these pathogens. We also get infected with other things like H. pylori is something that we see in probably 60% of the people that we see.
What is H. pylori?
Yeah, and H. pylori is a bad bug. He is okay. So all ulcer symptoms now are tied to H. pylori. GERD is tied to H. pylori. Pancreatic cancer, which is basically a death sentence, but we're turning that around, is tied to H. pylori. Colon cancer is tied to H. pylori. Breast cancer is comorbid with H. pylori. H. pylori is a big, bad bug that, and we, it took me 2 years, but I now have in TrueMedX, I have a supplement that will knock back, or at least it's reported to knock. I can't say that because I can't make a claim, but it's reported to knock back H. pylori, let's just say, quite well. But it's called our Gut Restore product. And so, listen, any of your audience, this might be the most important thing that we talk about. Any of your audience, if you have any kind of gastric upset, burning, when you eat, you burp. I asked one guy, I had one guy sitting across from me, talking about evaluation. I said, well, do you have any gastric burning or anything or upset when you eat? No, not as long as I take my baking soda. It's like, that ain't normal, dude.
Yeah.
Something going on. And then the other one that I had is, no, not as long as I sleep standing up. I go, you sleep standing up? But a lot of people have this burning gastric upset and they just think, oh, it's stuff I'm eating or my stomach is sensitive. Or no, you have pylori.
It's like literally, when you say it's like literally a bug, how do you...
It's a bacterium. It's a bacterium.
A bacterium that comes. How do you is it hidden? Is it you consume it in food? You don't realize it, or what? How's that work?
They may be spraying on us in the air. It's almost impossible to. And I get asked this question all the time. It's like, well, Chip, you say I have helminths and hook, round, and pinworm and H. pylori, and how do I prevent that from happening? Learn how to work your immune system is the best answer, because again, these things are everywhere. Put it this way. Okay, something dies by the side of the road, right?
Yes.
So we all have seen that, a squirrel or something, and then we come by a week later and it's gone. Well, let me explain that, okay, and explain what happens. But this will help you understand how prevalent these pathogens are and really their purpose in life, okay? So if you ask Chip, define life, well, I would say life has to do with electron flow. Okay, so if I'm moving electrons, then I'm alive. And that squirrel, while they're still moving electrons, has ceased to move electrons below a certain rate, let's say. And if you're not moving electrons below that rate, you're going to attract all of these bacteria that are made to break down tissue. Right. And so, we don't have a bunch of dead bodies laying around everywhere. Right. We've got a bunch of, bacteria that come along and will break that stuff down.
Decomposing. That goes back to the beginning of time. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And turn it back to, carbon or whatever. Well, guess what happens inside of you? You can have tissue systems that fall below the line. And why? Because you're infected with H. pylori. But if they fall below the line, now you call in and it doesn't matter if it's inside you on the side of the road, you're in the middle of a sewer factory, it doesn't matter. You're going to call in those bacteria, and those bacteria are going to start decaying whatever that tissue is or system is. And this happens all the time inside of us. But so we're constantly have this bacteria. We have a microbiome that's just filled with bacteria. And right now, because of how we eat, we have to have a very complicated and complex biome. Again, as we understand what we need to eat, all of that will go down. But we have to understand two things: what our inputs are and what they do to us, and then also these pathogens and how to work our immune system. Right.
Right. So it's almost like probably every one of us has been, even through our best
Oh,
intention, been compromised.
so,
We're in a constant state of, right, that cellular attempt to regenerate.
yeah.
And then you have the like knockdown capability of your overall homeostasis, your capability of as a human being. And then, like you said, something slips in there, like that bacteria that can like start to overwhelm your ability to kind of fight it and take care of it and knock it out. Is that what
Yeah,
kind of what you're saying?
absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you have multiple infections, well, now you've got, multiple fires that your immune system has to run around and put out. And,
Overwhelmed.
if one of those becomes the Pacific Palisades fire, well, then you're not going to be able to fight any other fires, and you're going to use up all your resources on the Pacific Palisades fire. And you're not even going to know it. The nice thing about a pylori infection, you at least know you have it because it hurts, and it hurts when you eat. But
Oh,
hook around and pinworms, you don't even know if you have them. You might have a raging brush fire inside of yourself that your immune system is just overly concerned with, and you don't even know it. So now let's wind everything back. So if I leave you naked and afraid, I
yes.
leave your only source of information to find an owner's manual about you as the internet and the soup of chaos and confusion. Well, I know this. You're going to get infected with something. And that infection may take 15 years or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. But eventually it's going to begin to decline your function. So what's it going to do? Well, you're going to get bone loss. Why? Because the immune cells that you need, basically the stem cells that you need to build the immune cells to fight infection, come from bone. So anybody with bone loss has an infection. That's why they
Mm.
have bone loss. The next thing that's going to happen
Oh, right.
is high blood pressure. Why? Because you're having to move all these chemical mediators around in your blood and clean up the battlefield. So your blood gets thicker. And thicker blood, well, it's a hydraulic fluid. Thicker hydraulic fluid creates more pressure. Thicker blood creates higher blood pressure.
Mm.
Then the next thing that happens is the kidneys get involved because they have to filter all that goo, and they get tired. They start throwing off all kinds of markers, type 2 diabetic markers.
Right.
So and eventually they'll fail. And if they fail, you're dead. The next thing that gets involved is the heart. It's easy to pump water through a tube. It's hard to pump syrup through a tube, and it requires a lot more work. So then the heart starts getting distressed. But all this happens, and then the last thing is kind of the liver. So you die of kidney, you die of heart, you die of liver, and we don't want those things involved in an infection. But we
Mm.
see, and again, we see this informationally. The machine that we have is not a diagnostic. I could never diagnose anyone, but it will identify in information pathogens and where they are inside of you. So we can
Mm.
get a good look at someone's informationally, their pathogen load, and then see how natural products, affect that. And we've
Right.
got, 3 years of that data now, which is quite valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Chip, I know your time is precious to you, and I appreciate it. I just have two other real quick things.
Okay.
Number one is if someone is sick, how would they determine what might be best for them if the endocannabinoid system could be a target for healing them for their specific situation?
Okay. Yeah. And so I would say a simple blood test will tell you a lot about your status. And if you have a high white blood cell count, that means that your immune system is activated and that you're fighting something. Okay. So anybody who has a high white blood cell count, and I don't mean like over the line, I mean, if it's higher than normal, you're fighting something. If your red blood cell count is low, that gives an indication about what it is. There's several different pathogens that will hook your red blood cells where you don't make red blood cells at the rate you used to. And then everyone's seen, and no one knows what they mean, but everyone's seen on a blood test, the neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, all those. So those percentages of how your white blood cells are parsing out are really important in basically understanding what your body is trying to do. So you can get a lot from a blood test, but in a perfect world, we test for what pathogens are inside of you. And there's no
Right.
good tests for that yet. There's just no good tests for that yet. Even, the pharmaceutical system really doesn't have a good test for that yet.
Are we close with AI? That could be
Uh,
something that comes
yeah,
along and have it be a new. But see, that would then solve a lot of problems, and then the money machine goes off, right,
yeah,
for all
exactly.
that system.
But the money machine, I think, is off now, and so I think that's kind of what we decided in the election. But the best technology that I've seen, and this is kind of what we use, is a frequency scanner. And so pathogens will have a certain frequency. They will, let's say,
Mm,
broadcast a certain frequency. Your heart broadcasts a certain frequency. And so it's easy to see with these scanners if a frequency A is in frequency B, right? So if that frequency of that pathogen is associated with the frequency of your heart or your gut or your, small intestine or whatever. So we use that, and that's a very interesting instrument in that it gives just a lot of information and a lot of, let's say, suggestions about what might be going on and where things are.
mm.
So the med bed technology, let's say, that's kind of in my mind where I think this is all headed, is kind of to, a bed like Star Trek, the bed that you would lay in, it would scan you and evaluate you, and then it would figure out what's wrong, then it would fix you, right? Well, that's possible, definitely. Certainly, the evaluation side of that is possible
Right.
with these frequency scanners. The frequency stuff is not good enough, although some people who practice this bioresonance say it is, to heal you yet, right? So it's not quite good enough. And I know a lot about frequency technology, and I can tell you why it's not good enough, but that's a whole nother show.
Sure.
But in the future, let's say the frequency technology will be good enough to alter organs, to affect cells, and so
Wow.
you'll be able to lay in a med bed and kind of get scanned, figure out what's going wrong with you, and then likely fixed. Now, that won't work for everything. There's fixes that I would have to do that are nutrient based, so I'd have to
Right.
give you something. But generally, that is kind of what's happening.
So would you say, like, right now, like with your, when you just mentioned about take another show, like from your experience and what we believe is real, it's a potential diagnostic to kind of like understand where you might be, but obviously there's no complete package to, like you just said, that to
Well,
take
it
care of you,
in a perfect world, if I could get the status of every cell in you, right? And this is kind of possible with AI. It's impossible right now because we don't have the brain power to, let's say, consider all the nuances of understanding what's going on with every cell. But if I can understand what's going on with every cell, or at least understand what's going on in your heart, your kidney, your different organs and major systems, and then use AI to, kind of fill in the blanks, let's
yeah.
say, now I've got a really good complete picture of health. And even the instrument that we have won't do that yet. So it will, I can scan pretty much everything in you, every organ and every tissue system, and it will tell me what's going on. But it doesn't yet have the ability to put all that information together.
Mhm.
And so that's what hurts my head every day. Let's just say.
Right, right.
And then
Well,
we're
it's people like you, Chip, that thank you for your work. And along that lines, I guess I want to just kind of I'll wind down with this because um, we know, like in the fitness business that I'm in, it's all about health, right? Healthy self maintenance, trying to do good things, trying to avoid the bad things we know in terms of what we feel healthy, right? Kind of sleep, optimal food and exercise and movement and circulation and everything that a lot of people, the general population, they know, right?
Yep.
And then we go about thinking that we're going to do our best our can, knowing or not knowing what environmental factors that we may have been exposed to at an early age or now or whatever, that we try to avoid being, safe with that. But for me, you know, being so proactive for so many years, ever since I was 18 years old, it's definitely paid off. And it's almost like I'm still, it seems like I'm still climbing a hill. and pushing a wheelbarrow of things that are both supportive, but like there's bumps in the road, which we talk about the unknowns in terms of, you know, how sickness can take you over if you're not at least having that wheelbarrow in hand and trying to go up that road, right? Get that exercise, get to eat better. You're making me want to, first thing I'm going to do after this podcast is buy a new freezer. I'm going to go get farm fresh meat local. It just sounds just so, and this is how these local podcasts, this information, we need to get more local, more empowering. What you're doing out there is fantastic. And I will tell you as I wind down here that I am very interested in actually contacting you. I'm going to invest some time and money on my side to come visit you. And I think I would love to come have you see what you would recommend and assess to what degree you can, because I find it fascinating, to what that timetable is. But I will definitely plan and want to come back so many months later, and we can revisit and I can talk firsthand, because I find your work fascinating. It's well overdue, and I would just suggest everyone that, it's sort of like, what's the overall answer? Well, I don't know. It's been all these little pieces of the puzzle, and now it seems like you're giving me some fresh wheels on my wheelbarrow. Nice. So I appreciate that. Continue the great work. And any thoughts that you want to share with listeners based on my ramble right now?
No, just it would be a pleasure to have you. I think, it would be I think we'd probably be able to do a little bit deeper, even dive on, what we do after you've kind of been through the experience and been through the experience yourself. And you'll be able to tie that back to the endocannabinoid system and things like that. But yeah, it's, again, we would love to have you. That's what we do. I love helping people, and,
awesome.
It's perfect. Yeah. So thank you, Greg. This has been great.
Absolutely. And one more other thing. I want you to also, I think you mentioned this at the beginning of our first part of our episode. But you're from you said the Chickasaw tribe?
Yes.
And you're in Oklahoma, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And, I find it fascinating because I think I mentioned to you when the first part of this episode that, I was always attracted to the Indian life. The cowboys and all that gear, it just didn't seem right. Yep. And I was like, I'm much more clean, bare butt back, raw earth guy. So anyway, again, it's fascinating in itself in terms of our history and our country and the state of the world, and with the chaos. I think it's going to be people like you and efforts all in these small communities. And I like to feel like I'm playing my part to try to get the word out, be a part of the power of the positive going forward. And hopefully we can all, as a society, get through this without too many scrapes and bruises unnecessary. So, Chip, thank you so much again for your time. I know you're a busy man and you're doing some groundbreaking stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. I'll hope to see you sooner than later.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye, my friend. All right. All right, everybody. That's it, kids. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. That was good, Greg.
We want to thank you, listeners, for all your support, your ongoing efforts to become a brand ambassador for Imagine Fitting In. There's a number of ways that you can support our efforts here. Number one is share it on your social media link. Share the episode, please. And be sure to hit the link, hit the button, subscribe button on YouTube. And we are also available on Apple and Spotify. And number two, you can please consider making any donation that you feel comfortable with. It's always appreciated to advance our efforts here and even increase the level of production and bring you more and more great guests from here in Dayton, across the country, and even around the world. So thank you again for those who have donated to date. and you can find the link in our show notes. And then finally, number 3, I love the idea of guest referrals. So if you know anyone who has a great story, would like to share their efforts within the community, about their work, their contributions, their efforts, from all mediums. We love a good story. Mentors playing a huge role in all of our lives. And here at Imagine Fitting In, we're trying to highlight the importance of mentors and encourage more of that, the same, to our young people in this community and potentially, extended area. And please consider that. We'd love to hear from you. Again, the show notes, you can reach me at thebalanceprofessor@gmail.com, and we hope to hear from you. So again, we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's always a blast. I feel it's a pleasure and an honor and privilege to be doing what I'm doing. So I look forward to hearing from you. And again, please enjoy, share, subscribe, donate, and become a brand ambassador, and even just refer a guest. So thanks again. You take care. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Professor.